Long before empires rose and fell, before the modern world took its first breath, there was a land of wonder. A land where gods were not just worshipped, they were lived with, feared, and immortalized in myth. Where democracy was born, philosophy was forged, and ideas danced freely in the minds of men who dared to ask, why? This is the story of ancient Greece, a civilization of thinkers, builders, warriors, poets, and visionaries, whose legacy still shapes our lives today. In this video, we'll dive deep into the glory of ancient Greece. From the rise of city-states to the birth of democracy, the genius of philosophers, the marvels of science and architecture, the power of myth, and the spirit of conquest. Welcome to the world that changed the world. Our story begins over 4,000 years ago on the island of Crete, home to the mysterious and advanced Minoan civilization. But far to the north, another power was rising. The Mycenaeans. Warrior kings who spoke an early form of Greek, they built mighty fortresses and launched legendary expeditions, including one that may have inspired the story of the Trojan War. Around 1200 BCE, both civilizations mysteriously collapsed, trade routes vanished, cities burned, writing disappeared. This became a lost chapter in history, a time historians call the Greek Dark Ages. But from the ashes, something new emerged. Small villages grew into independent cities. Each one was a world of its own, with its own laws, armies, and ambitions. These became known as city-states, or polis, and names like Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes would echo across history. Though they shared language, gods, and customs, they were often rivals, brothers in blood, yet enemies in war. This was the rebirth of Greek civilization, not as a single empire but as a mosaic of proud, powerful city-states. Among all the Greek city-states, one would rise not only in power, but in ideas. That city was Athens. And here, something revolutionary happened. The birth of democracy. In the 5th century BCE, Athenians made a bold decision. Power would no longer belong to kings or tyrants, but to the people. Not just in name, but in action. Every male citizen, regardless of wealth or class, had the right to speak, vote, and help shape the city's laws. They gathered in the assembly, debated issues, elected generals, and even voted to ostracize dangerous leaders by name. This was direct democracy, raw, chaotic, and loud, but it was real. The system wasn't perfect. Women, slaves, and foreigners had no political rights. But for the time it was radical. A city governed not by a ruler's will, but by the voice of its people. Athens laid the foundation for something far greater than itself. The very concept of democracy, of rule by the people, would survive empires, revolutions, and centuries. And today, echoes of Athens can still be heard in the halls of every free nation. If ancient Greece gave the world democracy, it also gave it something just as powerful, the art of thinking. And it all began with one man who asked questions that shook the world. Socrates, a stonecutter turned philosopher, roamed the streets of Athens, challenging every assumption. He asked simple questions with devastating impact. What is justice? What is virtue? How should one live? He never wrote a single word, yet his words lived on through his student, Plato. Accused of corrupting the youth and dishonoring the gods, Socrates was sentenced to death. He drank poison, willingly, choosing death over silence. Plato, devastated by his mentor's death, founded the Academy, the world's first university. He envisioned a world not of chaos but of perfect forms, ideal truths beyond the physical. In his masterpiece, The Republic, Plato imagined a society ruled by philosopher kings, wise, just, and immune to corruption. Then came Aristotle, Plato's most brilliant student and tutor to Alexander the Great. He didn't seek perfection, he studied reality. From logic and biology to politics and ethics, Aristotle laid the groundwork for what we now call science. His influence reaches from ancient scrolls to every modern university on Earth. Socrates taught us to question. Plato dared us to dream. Aristotle showed us how to reason. Together they created a golden age of thought, a legacy that still shapes how we learn, argue, govern, and live. To the ancient Greeks, beauty was not just something to be admired. It was a philosophy, a pursuit of perfection, symmetry, and harmony. And nowhere was this seen more clearly than in their art and architecture. Greek temples weren't just places of worship, they were masterpieces of design. The Doric style, strong, plain, no nonsense, the Ionic elegant, scroll-like, balanced, and the Corinthian ornate, floral, dramatic. These columns told stories of identity, culture, and the divine, and would later inspire architecture across continents. Standing proudly atop the Acropolis, the Parthenon is the very symbol of classical Greece, a temple dedicated to Athena, goddess of wisdom. Every stone, every line was crafted with mathematical precision. It wasn't just a building. It was a canvas of history, myth, and civic pride. Early Greek sculptures were rigid, emotionless, but soon a revolution took place. Muscles flexed, limbs moved, faces wept, smiled, screamed. From the Acropolis hurling a discus to the quiet grace of Venus de Milo, Greek artists sought to capture not just the body, but the soul. From Washington, D.C. to London, from Paris to Berlin, the fingerprints of ancient Greece are everywhere. Courthouses, museums, universities, all echo the language of stone spoken by the Greeks. Because to them, beauty wasn't just decoration, it was truth, it was order, it was divine. To understand the soul of ancient Greece, you must listen to its stories. Myths, plays, and poems weren't just entertainment, they were windows into the human spirit. The Greeks imagined a world where gods walked among mortals, flawed, powerful, and deeply human. Zeus, the mighty ruler, Athena, born of wisdom and war, Apollo, the radiant god of light and music. These deities didn't just rule nature, they reflected us, our loves, fears, pride, and vengeance. Two poems changed storytelling forever. The Iliad, a tale of wrath and war, and the Odyssey, a journey of endurance and homecoming. Penned by Homer, these epics were passed down by generations of oral poets. They gave us Achilles, Hector, Odysseus, heroes whose struggles still echo today in every tale of war, loss, and love. In open-air theaters, thousands gathered to watch the human condition unfold. Tragedy pulled hearts into sorrow and fate, with playwrights like Sophocles and Euripides exploring guilt, honor, and destiny. Meanwhile, Aristophanes, the master of comedy, dared to mock gods, politics, and even other playwrights, proving that laughter could be just as powerful as tears. What made these stories endure wasn't just grandeur, it was truth. Greek myths and plays showed the beauty and tragedy of being human. Ambition, jealousy, loyalty, sacrifice. And though the stages have changed and the scrolls have aged, their words still speak, still question, still live. The Greeks didn't just ask why the world worked, they asked how. With logic and observation, they began to turn myths into science. Pythagoras saw numbers not just as tools, but as keys to the universe. His famous theorem still unlocks secrets in architecture, astronomy, and engineering today. Then came Euclid, whose book Elements organized geometry into a logical system. So clear and powerful it became the foundation of math education for over 2,000 years. Archimedes was a mind centuries ahead of his time, mastering levers, pulleys, and buoyancy. His inventions were used in war, and his principles still guide modern physics. His famous cry, "Eureka!" wasn't just about water displacement, it was the sound of reason triumphing over superstition. While others treated illness with prayers and charms, Hippocrates studied the body. He believed that disease had natural causes and natural cures. He gave us the Hippocratic Oath, a promise to care, to do no harm, still taken by doctors today. This was the true Greek Revolution. Not just temples or armies, but the idea that truth could be discovered not through gods but through reason. They began a journey of knowledge, and we are still walking their path. Every 4 years the Greek world would pause. Warring cities laid down their arms, roads filled with travelers, all eyes turned to one sacred place, Olympia. The first recorded Olympic Games took place in 776 BCE, held in honor of Zeus, king of the gods. Only Greek men could compete, and only if they were free citizens. To win wasn't just sport, it was glory. a symbol of elite excellence in mind, body, and spirit. The games included races, wrestling, discus, long jump, and even brutal hand-to-hand combat. Victors were crowned not with gold, but with olive wreaths, eternal fame in their cities. Before the games began, a sacred truce was declared. Wars were paused. Peace was enforced across Greece, a rare unity in a land often divided. The Olympic tradition may have begun with Zeus, but today it burns for all of humanity. From ancient rituals to global celebration, the torch still carries their message of peace, unity, and the pursuit of greatness. In the city of Sparta, life was war, and war was life. From the moment a boy was born, he was prepared to fight. Weak newborns were left to die. At age 7, training began. At 20, he was a soldier. Discipline, endurance, and obedience defined Spartan society. In battle, their phalanx formation was nearly unbreakable. Sparta became a symbol of strength and fear. But even rival Greek city-states found unity when threatened by a common enemy, the Persian Empire. At Marathon in 490 BCE, outnumbered Athenians shocked the world with a victory over the Persians. A messenger ran 26 miles to deliver the news, the origin of the modern marathon. In 480 BCE, at Thermopylae, King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans made a legendary stand against Xerxes' massive army. Though they fell, they inspired all of Greece, and at Salamis, Athenian naval brilliance turned the tide. Greece had survived and defied an empire. But soon after defeating Persia, Greece turned inward. Athens, proud, wealthy, and powerful, clashed with its rival, Sparta. The result was a brutal 27-year conflict, the Peloponnesian War. Athens boasted democracy and culture. Sparta brought military might and discipline. Battles raged, alliances shifted, and cities burned. A devastating plague killed a third of Athens, including its leader, Pericles. In 404 BCE, Athens finally surrendered. Sparta had won, but all of Greece was left weakened, vulnerable, and divided. Warfare defined ancient Greece, forging heroes, destroying cities, and reshaping politics. These battles weren't just about land or power, they were about values, freedom versus control, unity versus pride. And in both victory and ruin, Greece left behind stories of courage, sacrifice, and the high cost of greatness. While Athens and Sparta clashed, a new power rose in the North Macedonia. Its king, Philip II, united the Greek city-states through force and diplomacy. But it was his son, Alexander, who would become one of history's greatest conquerors. From a young age, Alexander was different. His tutor was none other than Aristotle, who filled his mind with Greek philosophy, science, and values. Alexander didn't just want to rule the world, he wanted to understand it. At just 20, Alexander became king, and with lightning speed he launched an unstoppable campaign. He crushed the Persian Empire, marched through Egypt, where he was hailed as a god, and reached as far as India. In just over a decade, he built one of the largest empires in history, not just by sword, but by vision. Alexander didn't just conquer, he connected. In every city, Greek became the language of trade and culture. Temples, theaters, and libraries rose from Egypt to Afghanistan. This fusion of Greek and Eastern traditions became known as the Hellenistic Age. Science, art, and philosophy thrived. Cities like Alexandria became centers of learning and innovation, lighting the path for future civilizations. Alexander died young, just 32, but his legacy lived on. His empire fractured, but his influence never faded. Greek culture had become global. From the ashes of Greek independence rose a new world shaped by ideas, languages, and myths born in Greece, but spread by a Macedonian king. Though the Greek city-states eventually fell, first to Macedon, then to Rome, their legacy lived on. The Romans admired Greek culture so deeply that they preserved and adopted it, becoming the bridge between ancient Greece and the modern world. The idea of democracy, born in Athens, became the foundation for governments across the globe. Concepts like citizen participation, trial by jury, and equality before the law continue to define justice systems today. Greek thinkers laid the groundwork for modern science and education. From Euclid's geometry to Aristotle's logic and Hippocrates' medicine, their search for knowledge still guides how we learn and question the world. Greek architecture remains a symbol of power and beauty. From city halls to courthouses, we still build with Greek columns. In art, their obsession with human beauty and emotion lives on in sculpture, painting, and performance. So much of Western language, drama, and literature owes its soul to the Greeks. Words like democracy, philosophy, and theater come straight from Greek. And their stories, from Odysseus's journey to Oedipus's tragedy, still speak to our deepest fears and hopes. Ancient Greece may be long gone, but its spirit endures. In every classroom, every debate, every scientific breakthrough, and every piece of art, we are living echoes of a civilization that dared to ask, what is truth? What is beauty? What is the good life? This is the legacy of ancient Greece, the very foundation of Western civilization. From the myths of mighty gods to the logic of brilliant minds, from marble temples to battlefield legacies, ancient Greece was a civilization of paradox, of war and wisdom, of democracy and slavery, of beauty and brutality. And yet, in all its complexity, it gave the world something timeless. It gave us philosophy, science, politics, and art, the very foundations of how we live, learn, and lead today. As Socrates once said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Through the lens of ancient Greece, we're reminded to question more, think deeper, and strive for excellence. What was your favorite part of Greek history? Was it the fierce warriors of Sparta, the brilliance of Plato, or the marvel of the Parthenon? Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another historical deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring.